Um, Today with me is Brian, who is, well, you can introduce yourself. I feel like it'd be better.
Yeah, I suppose that makes more sense. So yeah, I'm a 3D modeler and a game developer who's mostly known, sadly, for making TRTF games for almost a living now. And I'm the director of and main modeler and writer and all that for Desolation, which is my upcoming official TRTF game. And I also am the human modeler, I suppose, for Jolly 4. So
Yes,
that's about
the
it.
the almighty Jolly Four.
That's me.
Yep. All right. So here with me we have, I think, 25 questions, and I'm gonna be asking them, and you're gonna be answering them. You better.
We'll see.
All right. Now, first question is. This should be simple. What got you into making games and modeling?
So I've gone back and forth on which game exactly got me into game development, but I suppose Arkham Asylum and a bunch of point-and-click adventure games is where my roots are. And those two games are what inspired me to want to start creating games. I suppose Minecraft and Minecraft adventure maps were also something that allowed me to express myself in this medium. And after a while, I decided that instead of making maps in Minecraft, I should start making actual projects. And because I still am terrible at drawing things.
Same.
3D modeling, yeah, I'm just never gonna be good at that. So 3D modeling seemed like the obvious choice. So that's basically how I got into these things.
Yeah. Oh, damn! Didn't expect Arkham Asylum to be there.
I'm a huge DC fan. I've always been.
That makes sense.
DC fan. And I mean, before that, there were a bunch of smaller, like the games with Batman. I remember playing like these Flash games with him.
Oh man.
But that's about it. I don't think I've ever really played a real Batman game before Arkham Asylum, and that game certainly changed my mind on what third-person combat can be like.
Oh, for sure.
The developers described it as a rhythm game for the investors when they were making it.
Yep.
And I think it's a great description, and it's a kind of combat that has inspired games ever since. And I mean, just look at Shadow of Mordor or
like
the new Spider-Man game.
Any like third-person action adventure AAA game, like it had a big influence. Anyway, that's beside the point. Moving on to question number 2 is, how the hell did you get involved with FNAF and TRTF?
So it's hard to say again. It's been a while since I was that involved in FNAF. I mean, I remember hearing about it in like the end of high school or whatever. I did play the first game, the second, third, and the fourth one. I did play all of those, and I did enjoy them at the time. I actually like FNAF 4, which might be surprising.
Yeah. Like, I don't like it.
I think it has something to it. If I were to approach it with the visual side of things, I think there is something there. With the idea of this home being like haunted by like the animatronics, there's certainly something there. Which is why, the joy of creation, if we're talking about fan games, is another fan game that I tend to really enjoy.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it definitely has something to do with the setting. As for TRTF, I mean, it obviously was one of the first FNAF fan games ever created.
One of, at least. I mean, Treasure Island, I think, probably came before.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that certain of the timeline, but I do know that it was one of the first ones.
Yeah.
And, that since I always wanted to make games, and this seemed like a good way to enter like game development, certainly as someone who had no idea what he was doing at the time, certainly seemed like a great way to enter the scene. So I was following along these early FNAF fan games. TRTF was one of them, and I didn't really give a shit about it until 5. Because, as I tend to say, I don't believe the original 4 games have any value apart from its nostalgia factor. Yeah, I mean, it's just, they're not great, and I think anyone with a brain can see that. But TRTF 5 is another story. That one I did follow. I still think to this day, for better or worse, I suppose, that it has certain values, most of them taken from Amnesia Machine for Pigs, but nonetheless, it's an intriguing setup, it's an intriguing scenario, and the environment it takes place in is one that fascinates me. You'll see why if you play Desolation, because I do explore that question, but yeah, hopefully that answers how I got into FNAF and TRTF.
Yes.
There you go.
If I had to try and explain how I got into TRTF, I wouldn't be able to, because I honestly have no idea how I got into that, at one point, at least.
Yeah, I mean, it's like hard. There are, things that are easier to grasp, certainly, like the newer things that happened to me, or like how I got into, like, Black Boys, TRTF remastered, or
Black Boy 74, just making a banger TRTF remake.
That's the man right there. I fucking love him, by the way. Like, I naturally tend to joke a lot about him and about working with him, but he certainly was a great guy. And I mean, look, like, TRTF is a well-known FNAF game for its horrible quality, but nonetheless it's well known. Most people are familiar with it, and especially like around 2018, which is around the time when I became a prominent member of its community. A lot of people were there, at the time. Like, I talked with the guy who's working on Pyro Illusion. I can't remember his name.
Demko, I think.
Yeah, but he's like had Hungarian roots, so that's, I guess, a fun fact for someone who doesn't know that. But he can't speak Hungarian to a certain level, so I suppose there was a connection there with him. I also talked with Lester Tellers back then.
Lester.
He is. Yeah, that the other guy. Like, I did talk a lot with him back then. I also talked with all the prominent TRTF members and all that. I even talked with Blackout, but we're not gonna mention that. And
Atlas.
Yep, he's also someone I was involved with for a time. But yeah, I mean, I was fortunate enough to talk and interact with most of the prominent members that are worth talking to.
Yep. Oh boy.
So I think that's where that question ends.
Yeah, pretty much. I don't want to drag this any further than it needs to. Moving on to question number 3 is what made you decide to make Desolation in the first place? Like,
dear God. Well, so when I first became a member of this wonderful community.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, for sure,
Totally.
That's right. Anyway, so now, I mean, it's not too bad these days. Previously, there were more problems, but today it's perfectly fine. So I was working as the main modeler on multiple TRTF 5 remakes, all of which got cancelled, of course. And I got pissed off that they were cancelled because I put a lot of effort into them. So I decided to try to have my own take on TRTF 5, which is what Desolation is. And because I realized that the original vision is one that can't be fulfilled in a reasonable way, I thought that it'd be better to have a different take on it while keeping what made TRTF 5 the thing it is. So, the edginess, the basic plot points, or the setup, the characters that the story was about, all that stuff is still there.
Right.
But written and rethought in a manner that's more, I guess, down to earth and manageable, and hopefully makes somewhat more sense than. I mean, I do think that my version makes a lot more sense.
I'm sure it will, because anyone can make something better than what the original TRTF 5 was, because Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a high bar to reach, but, it's still an official game. It didn't start off as one, but I did want it to stay true to what it was. Because at the end of the day, if I didn't, then it wouldn't have anything to do with TRTF. And this is a TRTF fan game to its core. It absolutely is. It has the same characters. It has the same edginess to it, and it's more self-aware than the original games. I at least I tend to believe it is.
I'm sure it is.
But yeah, I suppose that's what got me into the original Desolation.
Right. All right. So moving on to question number 4 is, what are some of the inspirations behind Desolation? What movies or games or anything that had an inspiration?
So, I studied economics and marketing, and then now I'm studying software engineering. So these two are two very, very dry subjects. But I'm also very much interested in philosophy, so I read a lot of Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, or Wittgenstein, or who else is notable enough, I suppose, as an inspiration? The main inspiration for sure is Schopenhauer. The questions he proposes in his, well, I think that we can say masterpiece, even though, it's certainly not a perfect interpretation, but I think it's almost as good as it gets. So a lot of philosophical questions is what inspired me, that I think about in my day-to-day life. So that'd be the main inspiration behind the story. I'm not going to, and naturally, Greek mythology, as I've mentioned, and then neo-noir thrillers. It's a mix of a lot of different genres and things that fascinate me. But as for games or movies, they are more a visual inspiration than for stories. So movies such as Midsommar, Tenet, I can't remember, The Lobster, which might be a strange movie to drop into this pack, but Killing of a Sacred Deer. I think these are the main inspiration for the visuals of the game, and for the gameplay, for it being an interactive narrative. It certainly was inspired by a lot of different games as well. Naturally, TRTF 5 was heavily inspired by Amnesia and Machine for Pigs, which that's self-explanatory. So naturally, Desolation is also inspired by that, but it was also heavily inspired by Layers of Fear 2, which again is a game that was heavily inspired by movies such as the work of David Lynch, silent era of like films. It also plays a huge role in Layers of Fear 2. Also, David Fincher's works such as Seven, or like there are a lot of inspirations. I think it's impossible to track down a single one, but for the story, I naturally, or I would say that it was mostly inspired by Schopenhauer, Greek mythology, and neo-noir. So that's about where my inspirations end. But we can also talk about Nier Automata.
Interesting.
And yeah, it's that game is a special one because it's nothing about it directly influenced me, but the thought of a game which can be so heavily influenced by philosophy is one that blossomed from when I played through Nier Automata. If you guys are not familiar with that game, a bunch of characters are called are literally named famous philosophers, such as like Pascal or like Jean-Paul or Simone. I can't remember her full name, but she's known as the first, or like she's thought of as the first feminist philosopher. So there are a lot of philosophers mentioned in that game, a lot of thought processes and all that. And a AAA game which can have and be about these topics is not something I thought would be real. Like it was unimaginable to me that someone would be able to create a game with these heavy topics and make it accessible and entertaining. So that was also a huge influence on me, the work of Yoko Taro. Yeah. And I again, this is getting very long, but as you mentioned, it will be edited out, so it doesn't matter. Yeah. But I was lucky enough to attend an online presentation that Yoko Taro did I think 2 years ago for university students about video game narrative and backwards writing, which is how he writes his stories, meaning that he starts at the very end, thinks about what feelings and what thought philosophical, or I can't fucking speak. So what thoughts he wants to convey at the end of the game, and then he basically figures out how he's going to get there. And that is a very, very similar process to how I approach writing games.
I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on to question number 5. Now this is more so. All right. Question number 5 is, all right, from 1 to 10, how much is Carson going to suffer?
Oh, 10, absolutely. It's not even a question. It might even be an 11. Carson was as a bitch by most of the community.
Yep.
Because, like, if we look at the original vision for TRTF 5, the original intent, he was an idiot throughout the entire story, right?
Pretty much.
And I did not want that to happen. I want the Carson to be someone, that the player feels comfortable being in control of, and not just like a punching bag or an idiot who just follows orders. So he goes through a lot, right? And he will suffer a lot throughout the story, both physically and emotionally. But he is there to defend himself, right? Like, he won't go down easy.
Right.
If you guys seen the trailer, you know that you've seen a couple of scenes that indicate this. But yeah, he will suffer, but he won't go down easily.
Right. So it's not just your generic horror game protagonist, it's just let's get beat up by enemies.
I mean, even that wasn't so generic. I think Outlaws 2 is what mostly started that trend of punishing horror game protagonists, like, when Blake goes through.
Oh boy.
Fucking Amnesia Rebirth followed that up as well. The Tomb Raider reboot as well likes to hurt Lara
a lot.
Yep. So that's definitely a trend there, but I would say, Carson, and I mean Lara fought back as well, but Carson definitely does at least as much as Lara did.
Right. So we're not going to see Carson enter the torture device suit. He just sees slumped on the floor.
Yeah, that sadly won't happen, guys. I know.
So sad. He won't be able to fulfill the prophecy.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I don't know what the prophecy was or what any of that fucking meant.
I could ask you the same thing.
But I certainly, again, there are elements of TRTF 5. I don't think I just threw all of it out and forget about the whole thing. No, I certainly did my research. I certainly looked at what the basic questions were, and I tried to come up with answers that are more satisfying than what Tyler came up with. But the questions at the end of the day are the same.
Right. That makes sense. I mean, it's an epilogue to TRTF 5, so it should. Anyway, moving on to question number 6. All right. If you could describe the character of Carson and let's say Allison in 5 or less words, what would they be?
Well, that'd be a bit of a spoiler if I were to describe them. The entire story is seen through Allison's perspective because he's the storyteller, as people tend to know in the community.
Always.
Yeah, you play as Carson, right?
Right.
But the interesting story is that you see it through Allison's eyes because he's the only one talking. So
yeah, it makes sense.
If I were to describe Carson, I would describe his true self and not how he's presented in the game, which is seen through Allison's eyes, right?
Right.
I can't really tell you what Carson is truly like. And I can't really tell you what Allison is like either. Because, again, there certainly is an act there. Right.
That I was expecting not to get an answer that way, because it did feel too spoilery, but at least I got an answer for something. Alright, so... considering that the original Desolation was... let's just say it didn't go as well as most people expected.
I think most people didn't expect it to go well, but go on.
Basically, the biggest issue was that, the game, you don't really know what's going on. There's no story in the original. So, but considering that you know the story of the original, were there any changes that happened with this remake? Like, was anything removed, changed?
So, the original game is an interesting talking point because it came out in a way that wasn't representative of the vision I had for it. Because again, I told this story many times, the game came out unfinished. The coder decided that he didn't like the fact that his game wasn't official and mine was, decided that he will take matters into his own hands and try everything he can to not have the game be successful and be the way I wanted it to be. So, I mean, a lot of the free roam, most of the free roam elements of the game is missing in the original.
Pretty much.
And since it would have been a point-and-click adventure game, removing the point-and-click adventure part is gonna hurt the overall pacing and the story of the game.
Yeah.
So, people are missing a lot when they try to play the original game.
Pretty much.
So that much should be clear. But there are things that are different in this remake, right? I mean, in the original game, Wroclaw played a role.
Oh God, I remember that. There was a mini game.
Yeah.
Oh God.
I'm not going to describe what role it played, but it had a role, and in the remake, it does not.
Thank God. I don't want Super Cancer in this.
No, I mean, Super Cancer wasn't part of the original game as well. It wasn't that cut and dry. I mean, look, if you play the game, there is a portal at the end that does certain things. It's not a connection to the road that follows, by the way. That was a
lot of people just thought, oh, this must be connected.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with that. I wrote the game before I joined Korea, so I had no idea what the story of the road that follows was. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. But that it's hard to answer. What exactly is different without, again, getting into spoilers? But certainly, Wroclaw plays no role in the remake anymore, and Allison's backstory is more thoroughly explored. That's also a huge change. And I looked at what parts of the original game made no sense to people and tried to naturally So I looked at what didn't make sense for people and added context to those, but also certain things didn't make sense because they were clearly missing due to the contents and all of that.
Very much.
So I added, all of those back in, and if there was still something that was unclear for people in general, then I tried to answer those as well. But I think there are people who understand the story of the original Desolation. I mean, it's not a whole lot of people, but I saw quite a few who made the connections, right? And who figured out what exactly was going on in that game, what the constant jumps between scenes meant, which, by the way, there won't be nearly as many jumps in the remake because, again, all the cut content is there. But people have an idea, especially in the fan within the inner closer circles of the TRTF fandom. Some people have an idea of what the story is, right? So if you are familiar with it, I think you'll appreciate what the added context within it are, but you won't really be surprised by most of the changes. So I suppose.
Well, that's speaking for those people, because I have no clue what the original story was.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. It's not an easy one to follow, especially with all the missing context. But it won't be easy to follow in the remake either. If you're expecting a cut and dry story here, when I literally said it was inspired by Greek mythology and philosophical, I can't fucking speak, thoughts.
Oh my god.
That's the best way to say it. Yep. Then well, you're a bit disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably be able to figure some things out in the story. You know, I won't be left completely in the dark like the original one was.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly won't be completely left in the dark, but
all right,
the game is expecting a lot from you, which might or may not be a good idea, especially when we're talking about FNAF fan games, when most of the player base is not.
Yeah, I'm just expecting the video in this game to be titled something along the lines of a first philosophical fan game.
I mean, I'm not sure if it's the first one, but
I haven't seen any others that really are philosophical, mostly because just how vague their stories like to be.
I mean, yeah, I suppose that might be true, but philosophy is trying to answer questions that have been asked by people for millennia, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much.
Even if it's not directly philosophical, even so, a lot of the questions are already there, even if not knowingly or whatever. I can give a few examples, but I'm not going to because then I kind of.
Yeah, spoiler. Yes, we're not doing that.
I'll avoid that.
We are not King Carter. Don't worry. All right. Question number 8 is: how long would you say it took you to write the story or script for the game?
So, the remake or the original?
I guess both. How long?
So, the remake. I rewrote the entire script for the remake, right? But the core story is the same as it was for the original game as well. I just tried exploring it in a more followable manner, if that's even a word.
Let's go with it.
Sure. So that certainly is. I'd say writing it took half a year at least, something like that.
Half a year, all right.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, I am still changing things around. If I come up with a better line, I have it be re-recorded by voice actors and all that. I keep adding things to it or changing things around, seeing how people react, playtesters react to certain things. Something not clear enough, or if they didn't like the delivery of a line or how something sounded, not against rewriting those things. So I don't think the script is ever fully finished right until the day the game is published.
Pretty much.
It's fucking done. But before that, it's gonna keep changing. Lines, not the actual storyline that has been the same for years now.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I was kind of impressed by Weshed. I was able to write a 150-page script for Jolly 4 really quickly. Oh.
Yeah. I mean, that is impressive, but, if you're trying to rewrite an already existing franchise and also trying to add your own nuances into it, you want to stay respectful, even if the franchise we're talking about is the Return to Freddy's. You're still trying to
Jolly, because Jolly did not have a good story before. Oh no.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm not a quick writer by any means, and certain poetry, the opening line of the game, that took, even though it's 5 sentences or 6 or whatever. That took weeks to finish.
Right.
For it to sound right.
I could imagine. All right. Moving on to question number 9, yeah. So it's well known that Allison is your favorite character, but why is that? Like, not getting into spoilers, but like, why is Allison your favorite character?
I mean, I always like villains in stories. I think they are much more interesting to write than heroes are. But I mean, he's not really a villain to begin with. I just like to write characters who are complicated. I don't really enjoy. Well, that's not really true because I do enjoy Greek mythology, which was again known for these very cut and dry characters in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't really that because like all the different characters represented a certain trait in humans, and they kind of stick to that and watch how those traits interacted with one another. But that's a whole other discussion for another day.
Yeah.
I think what makes Allison interesting is the sheer insanity of his like evil presence in the original game, and taking that and trying to craft him into an actual character who's not just.
I could imagine that being a nightmare to do because there's some things Allison does in the original story that just make no fucking sense.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's not fun if a character is just evil for the sake of being evil.
Yeah,
and does like horrible shit because he needs to. Like, it's not as simple as that. Here, he's a very, very complicated character, but still is Carson, even though he doesn't speak throughout the entire game.
It's gonna be interesting to see how you craft a sound protagonist who's an actual character. I mean,
it's interesting again because you see him through Allison's eyes, and you have to kind of decide on your own whether or not that depiction is truly who he is, or how Allison perceives him, or how he wants Allison to perceive him. But I think his the way he interacts with the world and characters around him is what defines Carson, whereas Allison is mostly defined by the things he's saying or not saying.
All right.
So these are two very different characters, right? And I think their difference is what allowed me to explore them in a unique manner.
That's gonna be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to that.
I hope so.
All right, so question number... I keep forgetting numbers. Question number 10. I don't know how to really... I guess I'll just ask it like how I wrote it. How difficult are the enemies going to be to deal with?
I mean, the game... So, I don't believe games can be hard. Life can be hard. Games can't. Like... The games can be, difficult, but at the end of the day, all games or most games out there are designed for you to beat it.
Yeah.
And this is no different here. I designed the game to be beaten. I want people to beat it, but I don't give it to them. Like, they have to put in the work, they have to listen, they have to think, and I think. Like, I believe if you're capable of thinking, you should be able to get...
I mean, we're speaking to a TRTF community.
I know, but still, I have faith in people. I believe that if they put their...
Of course, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No offense to anyone.
If they put their mind into it and if they try, I think they can get through the game. But it certainly won't be the easiest FNAF fan game ever created. It also doesn't need like a 10-page tutorial or whatever.
Post-shift to be like.
It's not like that at all. But there's certainly, you need to put in some effort. Certain things are also designed to be confusing. Again, the office segment, you need to again, if you play the original game, you already know, but you need to take care of a generator while downloading a bypass phone while also trying not to die. And Carson's not a technician. He's like a cop, He has no fucking clue about how any of that stuff works. So if you look at it and it's confusing, but it's meant to be confusing because Carson has no fucking idea what he's doing, right?
Right.
And the confusion is there on purpose, and you have to figure it out and deal with it. And maybe you'll die, but who gives a shit? I mean, I don't think games should be afraid to kill the players. And if you die, it will tell you what killed you and what you can do to avoid being killed. So that the info will be there, right? I'm not
right.
I'm not, but you'll have to work for it.
That's totally, fair. I mean, you can't just, it's not a walking simulator. You can't just walk through the entire game and you get to the end. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
All right. That was question number 10. Question number 11. So you've made the scrap design for the puppet public at this point. But you've also talked about actually implementing into the game. So are you sure about that, or are you still not sure about actually implementing in the game?
I'm getting pretty sure about it. It's an ongoing process, but I'm at the point where I have renders of it, and it's a very interesting design in my opinion. It's unlike all of the other on purpose.
Pretty much.
It's very much like it doesn't fit with the others. It doesn't fit with the environment. It doesn't fit with anything, right? And that is absolutely how it's supposed to be, and it conveys something in the story that's currently only being hinted at. But when you play the game, I think even from the intro you'll be able to grasp, hopefully why that is. So it's I think we're at the point where it's more likely that the original model will be replaced with this remake of it.
I hope so, because that one looks better, in my eyes at least.
Thank you.
Moving on to question number 12 is, what has been the most challenging thing to model or write?
Well, write, it's easily like the poetry within the game. That one, it's not an easy work to make it sound right, have it convey something, be understandable, have people be able to depict or to decipher what each verse is meant to convey. That's not an easy task. So that was easily the hardest thing to write. The design document was also a bit challenging. It's 15k words long, and it has every single detail about the game in it, like the pacing where each item is located, literally what music should be used where, how the music should be used. It has every single detail about the game in it. That one was hard to write as well. As for the modeling, I mean, it was easily the environment. The environment of the second ending is quite possibly my most detailed environment that I have ever created. So it's gotta be that or chapter 2 of the game.
Right. I mean, chapter 2, the most forgettable chapter in the original game.
Yeah, well, I think you won't be able to forget this one.
All right, that's great. That's really good. So, let me see. Oh, fuck. I did not mean to do that. God damn it. Go back. All right. Well, speaking of, since you mentioned actually music, question number 13. What can you tell us about the soundtrack?
Oh, it's very emotional. I believe the emotional core of games lie within the music of the experience, especially in horror games. Music tends to play a huge role in conveying the emotions or that the characters are supposed to be feeling or not feeling. So it plays a very similar role in the remake as well. Multiple people have worked on the soundtrack, and it has all sorts of genres within it, and some of which will be very surprising. I feel it's not something anyone is expecting, especially like the second ending. I think will like you won't ever play a fan game that has a similar setting and music than the second ending will have. I can absolutely guarantee you that.
Damn, even Jolly 4? Damn.
Nothing will ever go there for very obvious reasons, because it's a very specific place that usually doesn't come close to FNAF in any way, shape, or form, but due to the unique setting of Desolation, it's something that I explore. And yeah, I feel like the soundtrack is going to be very emotional, very synth piano heavy, but also has like orchestral parts to it. It doesn't have any songs with lyrics, which is something I'm personally against.
Yep.
Because I feel like it can.
You made it pretty clear.
Yeah, because it can limit the reach. Because if you have lyrics, if it's in English, people who don't speak English will have no clue what it means, and it's also can limit how people interpret the events that are unfolding. So yeah, that's something that I usually don't include in my games. Same case here. And yeah, I'd say that's what people can expect. And
yeah.
So far, I posted a few tracks in certain Discord servers, and people were blown away. So I'm hoping the soundtrack as a whole will have a similar effect on anyone who listens to it.
Speaking of emotion, would you say that the game itself, like the story, has its emotional moments? Could it make someone, let's say, cry?
I highly doubt it. I mean, it's not that kind of a story. Like, I'm not going for these big emotional moments. It's an experience, right? You're meant to think, you're meant to analyze what happened, and you're meant to come up with an answer after you finish playing the game. But it won't, I don't believe, at least it won't make
that's
anyone cry.
That's what I wanted to know. All right, question number 15 is gore. How gory is Desolation going to be?
Well, it's as gory as it gets for FNAF fan games. None of the fan games I ever seen will have come anywhere close to it, and I don't think they ever will. So, yeah, it's again due to TRTF 5. Everyone knows it's an edgy game, right?
Right.
And it serves a purpose other than to entertain, because again, the gore in the game is there to entertain. It's not supposed to be taken seriously most of the time, right? I think there is going to be a huge contrast between specific scenes, but most of the time the gore is there to make you laugh, to make you feel somewhat sorry for Corsi, but also enjoy the insanity of what's unfolding in front of your eyes, right?
Right. That's interesting.
Like it's and it's also there to make you not want to die, though. Like, because it's a brutal scene. Some of them are more like uncomfortable than others.
Right.
So it's there to make you know that you're in real danger. But if you die, it's like not a cheap jump scare. It's a spectacle. You can skip through it if you've seen it before. Like it's mostly there to entertain most of the time, but not always. And I think it's gonna be very, very clear.
So does that mean that when you die in the game, it's not just a like generic scream in your face jump scare?
Absolutely not. It's always a death scene. It's like how it is in like Outlaws 2.
Oh,
pretty much 99% of the time when it comes to how you die in the game. There isn't really a jump scare.
That's great. Oh, I love that. I would say this is an interesting one. So, what would you say is? Maybe you can't answer it, but let me just ask you anyway. So, what would you say is the scariest aspect of Desolation?
I think the scariest thing is the message of the game, but I mean, you can interpret it however you want. It's hard to like, I'm not going to spoil what it is. I'm not going to limit how people interpret the game. You can look at it how any way you like. Right. But I think the questions it proposes on us is a very tough and scary one. But if you look at as for the gameplay, it's a point and click / sit and survive mix. You go around, and it's also a hidden object game. Yep. So most of the time, you're exploring, you're looking for items, you're trying not to die. But are you really scared throughout most of it? I would say not. Like it's a puzzle game. You're thinking, you're trying not to die, but there aren't jump scares. You always know if something's coming. Most of the time, that there are a few surprises there, and there are scenes that are going purely like they are going for you to be scared. Like there are scenes that have that as their main purpose. But I mean, look, can a FNAF fan game really be that scary? I don't think they can.
Right. But I do believe some can be scary if they move away from the tropes. I
don't know. I'm not someone who gets scared easily at all.
Same. I mean,
whatsoever. I mean, I couldn't tell you the last time I got scared by a game. It just hasn't really happened.
Actually, it kind of sounds hypocritical because I did get scared by Pop Goes at one point. Oh shit.
That's funny. I mean, jump scares, if it happens well, it can scare you. Like I was watching Jaws in IMAX because they were like re-releasing a 4K remaster of it here in Budapest in IMAX. So I did watch that, and it has that scare when they find the dead guy under the boat. Like that got me. That made me jump.
Right.
But other than that, I really can't tell you when was the last time something in a game truly scared me.
I could count a couple of moments that scare me in games, but I'm not going to do this since that's not what we're talking about here. So let's move on from Desolation questions for just a little bit. And why don't we talk about the other game you're involved with, Jolly 4? What would you say about the game and the team?
So the game is a very interesting one. It has a very similar understanding of what a FNAF fan game that's trying to be unique should be like. It's unlike, again, any FNAF fan games you're gonna play. I can promise you that. It certainly has a very unique structure, setting. So it's a great project to be working on, and the team is very passionate about it. Everyone takes their job seriously, which is not always the case. Most of the time, it's not the case.
Yeah, especially when it comes to fan games.
Yeah, but it is the case here, and it's a very exciting thing to be a part of.
So how are you going about modeling the humans? Like, I mean, we know you use MetaHuman, but you probably use something else as well, right?
So MetaHumans was designed purely for Unreal. That means that all the materials, the hair, everything is there purely for it to work within Unreal. Jolly isn't using Unreal. So
it was at one point, but now it's not.
But it's not anymore. So how the problem mostly comes of trying to port it to other engines and make it look the same as how it did within MetaHumans. And my role mostly comes down to that, because I take the model, I re-sculpt the face, and edit it around within Cinema 4D, because the sculpting tools with MetaHumans are very limited. I retexture it, redo the materials, redo the hair, because you can't port that. It's done like as a simulation within Unreal, so I have to use my own hair cards and try to recreate the hair myself. So that is always a challenge. Clothing options are also very limited within MetaHuman, so that falls on me as well to design those within Marvelous Designer, which is what I use with clothing. And
right.
That's basically what my role is like. And then once that's done, someone else has to port it to Blender, because I'm not using Blender, I'm a Cinema 4D modeler, and most of the team uses Blender. So I have nothing to do with that part, though. So my job ends with the Cinema 4D version of the models.
Right. That makes a whole lot of sense, because I feel like even I knew like that MetaHuman won't work in ClickTeam. So
yeah, I mean it's not just as easy as pressing two buttons, creating a preset MetaHuman, pressing export, and then you have it ready. Like it's a very complex workflow. I mean, it's not that complex, but it certainly is more complex than how if we just say that I'm using MetaHumans and that's it. Like that's not the case at all. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. So, speaking of which, how long would it take? How long would you say it takes to make a human model?
I mean, from scratch or from MetaHuman?
Let's say from scratch.
From scratch, it can take months easily. I mean, if you wanna perfect it, there is a female character in Desolation who I have not shown yet, and who I'm not gonna name, and she has a clothing that took months to create. It's a very complex one for sure, and like that character took months. I also remade 2B from Nier Automata, recreating her with her swords and like paws and clothing and texturing it in Substance Painter, right? That all took months. If you're doing a human model from scratch on like the highest level of quality possible, that's gonna take you a month. Like you're not gonna be done with it if you're doing it completely from scratch. Especially if you can't like simulate the hair either. You have to use hair cards. Like there are a lot of aspects to making human characters, and like if you have to do the eye rendering from scratch as well, if you don't have like a preset material ready, that's also gonna take you a long while to figure out. Like it's a very, very complicated process.
Yeah, I would imagine. I've heard that humans are hard to model.
Yeah. So like that, then I'm not even talking about child characters. Like modeling children is something even human modelers are not well versed in. Not a lot of people, like games tend to use realistic children models, by the way. Try to find a game that came out, like, I don't know, in the last 10 years that has realistic children in it. Because you're not going to find a whole lot. I mean, you can find, like stylized games, like, with that anime kind of style. You're certainly going to find characters that look like children, but are of course 1,000 years old.
Yeah, because that's how anime works.
Yep. So you certainly will be able to find those, but That's a whole nother challenge of its own.
Yeah. So anyway, moving on to question number 20. Back to Desolation question. Questions. Jesus, I can't speak. So in total, I'm just asking for a number. How many characters are there in Desolation, including animatronics?
Including animatronics. Well, it's hard because I recently cut 3 of them, which people are not going to be happy about, but they'll be able to see them in the behind the scenes and cut content shit.
Interesting.
So wait, let me count. Okay, you do you count a character who shows up for like a single cutscene or whatever? Because there are multiple of those, but like they aren't really characters, they are just background. But I mean, their role are important, but they're most of them is just extras or whatever. Like let's just talk about real characters who actually have a huge role in the story. This is gonna take a while to count all of them. So there are 3 main human characters. That much should be clear.
Right.
And there is the Dead King. That's not his actual name, but that's
the Dead community. Yes, the Dead King, which is
that's the name the community gave him. But
yeah,
it's nowhere near close his actual name.
Which has got their hopes up now. All their hopes have crumbled.
Yeah, there's of course the puppet, Freddy, Chica. So that's 7 already. Naturally, Lockjaw shows up 8. I think that's all I'm going to talk about for now.
Yeah, all right. So I would imagine that there are a lot. All right. Anyway, moving on.
I mean, at least 8. Like that's quite a few characters.
Yeah. All right. So let me see. All right. So question number 21 is, since we know that Tyler is involved with Desolation, well, he's only voicing Allison, and he's like a executive producer, I guess you could say.
I don't know how an executive producer works in a FNAF fan game, though. Yeah,
but whatever. Anyway, how's it been working with him?
Absolutely fantastic. He's a great guy to work with, by all means. I mean, there are people who, like, when you start a project, they will promise to do this, and that. But when it comes to actually doing it, they all fade out of existence. Tyler is not one of those people. If he promises to do something, he will do it, and he will do a great job at it. It will take him a while for sure, but he will absolutely do it. And not only that, but he is absolutely open. I know people who worked with him in the past say that he didn't care for anyone's feedback and was very enclosed in his own world. And I'm sure that's true. Like, I don't doubt what they're saying is true at all. But working with him today, that's absolutely not the case. He's always open for feedback. He's always open for your own creative input in his projects as well. Like, not just mine. If we're talking about Mad Mind or even The Road That Falls, he's absolutely open to anyone's, within the team. Anyone's
that's great
input. So he's great to work with. He's a professional. But he's also very nice. He cares about how you're feeling, and he's just great to work with.
That's awesome. That's really nice to hear that he is.
Yeah, and I mean, he improved a lot since the TRTF 5 days. And I mean, most of the people within this community are children, so it's not fair to say that they're immature, because of course they are. They're all children.
Yeah.
But he is a professional by all means, and that feels great, to work with someone who you can talk to as a human being, and who will actually be respectful and be mature enough to have thoughts that can creatively and also emotionally empower you.
Mm-hmm. That's great to hear. All right. Oh God, what is up with my throat? Oh, yeah, answer this one. Well, question 22 was, why do you find TRTF 5 to be such an interesting game? But I feel like you answered this one.
Yeah, probably have, but I'll try to answer it again. Or maybe you'll edit it together. I don't know, but yeah. So TRTF 5 is interesting because of its setup. Mostly, I also think the environment is very interesting. But it's like larger than life hellhole of a building that's like towering over you. It has like fucking 15 floors and all that. It has a church in it, a bedroom, and also like these steampunkish like dungeons, basically.
Yeah,
like
pretty much. That's the best way to describe it.
It's an absolutely insane environment, but it's a very, very interesting one. People have found it interesting for years now and are trying to recreate it because of like this insane promise. And taking this environment, trying to make sense of it, trying to find a scenario where it can make sense, and have these characters be in this environment, in this over-the-top, crazy, edgy world.
Yes, of course.
That is very fun, in my opinion, at least.
All right. So, yeah, I see it. I mean, I can agree with you. I mean, it's a very interesting setting for a game, I guess.
Yeah. And it's also a game that is heavily focused on its human characters, which FNAF, I think even FNAF is focused on its human characters. I mean, no one gives a shit really about like Chico or whatever. Like, people are interested in Billy and Afton, of course. Like, he is what draws people in. That's why, Springtrap is like the most, I think, interesting character for most people in that series. Maybe Toy Chica draws people in as well, but for different
reasons. Yeah, for different reasons.
Whatever. So TRTF 5 was also very much focused on human characters, mostly because most of them were self-insert for kind of, and that's not the case.
I mean, literally one character was named BFP. Yeah. Like, come on.
That's not really the case here anymore. But I'm very much fascinated about the human characters in this story, and I think I was able to do something with them that is very much mine. I mean, Desolation is a game that cannot be made by anyone else, purely because of how personal it is. Not because any of the characters like resemble me, but because of the thoughts that are in it are ones that are very close to mine. And our explorations of ideas that I ask every day.
Right. God, what is up in my throat? Anyway, I don't really have much to add on that. It's just, we're moving on to another question.
Sure.
Question number 23. All right, this is more so a confusion about the floors of this game. Like, I'm so confused. So there's floor 12, 13, and then there's 14. Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So is your question why I started off on floor 12 or why it has so many floors or what exactly?
Yeah, why does it have so many floors?
It's very important that the building is larger than life and that you're ascending through an unreal amount of obstacles and challenges, and you just keep going and you're reaching this insane number of floors in a building that cannot physically exist. Like, it in my opinion at least, it needs to be larger than life. It needs to be larger than you, larger than the player. And it's also a great way to make them question whatever they are seeing, if it's real or if it isn't. If it isn't, why it isn't, like what all of these things are meant to represent. I mean, the environment is one of the key players within like if you want to understand the meaning of the game, you have to look through why, like you have to look at Fazbearing as a character of its own, and I think that's as much as I can say without going into detail.
Right, because I was also confused because you said there are only like 3 floors in the game, so
yeah.
All right,
and it's like, okay, so chapter 2 exists. That's also like an anomaly that you kind of need to solve.
Right.
And there's also like there are a bunch of parts to this game. I'm not going to talk about.
Of course.
Hopefully, people will be able to find. It's not going to be easy though.
All right. So this is another one that is probably going to be hard to answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway because this is an interview. I'm not just going to be sitting here in silence. So question number. Hold up, I forgot the number. Okay, 24. Yeah, 24. What is your estimated length of the game?
So this is a very interesting question. Someone asked me this in the wiki server a few weeks ago, I suppose. And I said that it can be speed run in 15 minutes. And it's true, it can be speed run in 15 minutes. I don't doubt that. But so it's a hidden object game, right?
Right.
Point and click adventure game. If you don't know where things are, which you won't in your first playthrough, I can't guarantee you how long it will take anyone to solve a puzzle or to find an item or to get through a challenge. I mean, it's going to be different for pretty much everyone who plays the game. There are no hints in it. Like, if you can't find an item, you're going to be fucking stuck. Like, it's as simple as that. You need to find it to progress, and naturally there are clues to where it is, but the game will never explicitly tell you anything.
Right.
So it's very hard to say. There are also optional parts of the game that you do not need to complete at all to finish the game. A bunch of it is purely optional. I mean, the entire second ending is purely optional, and it makes up half of the game, right?
Right.
Like how I can't really give you an estimate. The only thing that I can say, yes, it can be finished in 15 minutes if you leave all of the optional content. You know where all of the items are. You can solve all of the puzzles in a few minutes, and you can beat the office segment and finish chapter 2 as well and skip all of the cutscenes. Yes, it can be done in 15 minutes. Will it be done in 15 minutes? Absolutely not. It will at least take you, I'd say, 2 hours, but maybe you'll finish it faster, or it will be a lot longer.
It's
impossible to say.
I guess it depends on the player.
Absolutely, and I mean it also depends on how much you want to look into the game.
Well, I like to take in the environments, the story in games, so it will probably take me a while.
And I mean, look, if you want to get the second ending as well, it's gonna take you at least 4 hours, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there are a bunch of very, very stupid secrets that I put into the game. Like I like to put funny things. I don't want to take myself too seriously in any case. Even though the story is very serious, I put a lot of fun into it. It asks difficult questions. At the end of the day, if you're not having fun, why bother? It doesn't make if you're making something that takes itself too seriously, no one will be able to relate to it but yourself, and that's not what I want to do. So there are a bunch of dumb secrets in it that you can find. Some of them have way too much effort put into it. There is an entire I'm not gonna spoil it, but there is one that's gonna take a while to get. And I think the results will be worth it because they are so incredibly stupid that you can't help but laugh, at least in my opinion.
I can't wait for that.
Yeah, it should be fun.
All right. Now, the penultimate question, number 25. Why did I say it like that? I don't know. But of course, I have to ask this. Which character in Desolation would you say is the hottest?
I mean, depends on if you like females like I do. Males, it's... I mean, people have said that Alison looks very hot. You can check the Desolation comment section, it's there. Multiple, even guys and girls have said that Allison looks hot. So
I can see like he's looking.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if so, people think that Allison is hot. I won't disagree with that either. There's also, again, as I said, a female character in the game. I also think she's very hot, but you guys have not seen her yet. So it's it depends on your preferences, I suppose.
Boy, I love my non-serious questions, and the last one is question number 2015 is why did Gron slip on soap?
Because he's a fucking idiot, probably. I mean, what else is there to say? He is blind, He just fucking walked over the soap like.
He was. At one moment he was torturing a child. The next one he slips on soap and falls into.
It happens to the best of us, And it traveled like 3 meters on that soap. Yeah. Fell into the suit in a manner that. Like his entire body went into it, right?
Yeah.
And it fucked him. So I suppose that soap was sent there by God himself. And honestly, we're all better for it.
Yeah, we're all better. Also, no, Gron is not in Desolation.
No, he's not. Gron is, I killed him and he's fucking dead. And the soap killed him.
The soap killed him. Damn. Man, I can't wait to see Calm Not Cots in the game. It's gonna be.
If I knew who he was, sure, he's in it. Why not?
He's like, if you don't know who he is, he's a protagonist of TRTF 2.
Dear God, how did I forget that?
Oh man,
all the TRTF 2 fans are furious now.
Yeah, how dare you forget his name?
I don't fucking care, man. Like, fuck him, I don't give a shit.
Okay. But
I did work on a TRTF 2 remake though, and I TRTF 1 remake.
Yeah. Winter Wonderland. Be sure to check it out on GameJolt. It's very good, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I modeled it, the environments. So check it out, I suppose.
They're banger models. Anyway, that's it. That's all the questions I have. Okay, this was all right. I hope this was fun for you. I definitely had fun with this.
Same.
Before I end off this video, guys, be sure to check. I gotta do this. Be sure to check out Desolation on GameJolt. Please get it to 80,000 followers.
Yeah.
Desolation sweep. And yeah, that's it for me. I'll see you guys in an interview where I'll be interviewing Ultra Knight next time.
Oh. Well, I guess you have there prepared,
Yep.
Come back, I hope.
Yeah, I hope. I've heard he's actually. Someone told me he's rebuilding himself slowly. So.
And right after that, you'll have Nietzsche here.
Nietzsche, totally. I mean, Dormitibus was such a peak game. I really enjoyed getting through all 12 nights.
It just makes sense.
Yeah. Jokes aside. Yeah. I don't know when I'll upload next. Probably in like 8 years, but until then, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.